good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Maayong hapon. I'm very happy to be here. I'm connecting to most of you in Western Visayas. I'm connecting all the way from Marikina City, no, sa Luzon, Metro Manila. First off, I want to thank, of course, the organizers of this program for reaching out to OOTB, Out of the Box Media Literacy Initiative, for this very wonderful opportunity to share the work that we do and lead you in to lead a discussion in this very important topic that we have for this afternoon. And then, of course, bukod sa DOST Region 6, I want to thank everyone, no, who is making their time this afternoon, no? Imbis na gumawa ng iba pang mga gawain, ay nakahanap kayo ng oras para manood at sumali sa ating talakayan ngayong hapon. So before anything else, no, this is how I want to start our afternoon. Hindi bago, no? Hindi bago yung paksa natin ngayong hapon. In fact, over the course of the pandemic, no, simula last year, I've been invited. OOTB has been doing trainings and workshops here and there on the very topic of fake news. And the first thing that I always ask the audience or the participants in these trainings and webinars is, ano na bang alam ninyo sa fake news at ano yung hindi nyo pa nalalaman, no? I always want to find out what are the underlying motivations of people for attending a webinar like this, no? I'm assuming hindi naman siguro lahat sa inyo ay pinwersa, no, na umattend ngayong hapon. So, I want to ask from your end, no, ano ba yung ina-expect ninyong matutunan pa ngayong hapon? And also, by asking that question, I want you also to reflect on what you already know, no, and what you already have been doing since this thing called fake news have arrived in the Philippines, no, and have been so popular. So I want us to keep the chat here in Zoom very busy and active. So when I ask questions, hopefully, no, you can type in, key in your answers dito sa chat. I'm also monitoring actually the comments in Facebook right now. So if you have any comments or anything you want to say as we go through the discussion, hopefully I can get to your insights as well. No? So before anything else, right, before we get started with the very slides that I have prepared, I have here a sort of checklist. No? I want you to ask yourselves, how strong is your defense against fake news? Or another way of saying it, how fake news proof are you? No? Alam niyo naman yung phrase na scratch proof or waterproof. Ibig sabihin, protektado ka sa scratch or protektado ka sa ulan o basa. Now, pagdating sa fake news, how strong is your defense against it? No? Here are some of the things that hopefully many of you can tick. No? Ibig sabihin, check ba ito sa listahan ninyo? Do you think you're able to check whether an online content is authentic or not? Do you think or do you check how your personal biases affect how you take in the news? Do you search for different versions of the news in different media outlets? At panghuli, when you see a person sharing false information, do you know how to correct them respectfully? So this session that we will be having for this afternoon, as much as it's going to provide you with new insights on what disinformation is, on why it spreads, on what are the different impacts of it in the society, this session is more of how you can hone your skills, right? Hone your skills in defending yourselves against fake news, no? And it involves a lot of reflection. So simula pa lang, gusto ko na meron na kayong ganong klase ng recognition, no? Ano na ba yung mga skills na meron ako at paano ko pa ito mapapalago at mapapaunlad. So the title of our presentation is Fake News 101, the whats, whys, and hows of disinformation in the Philippines. No? Tatlong malalaking tanong na sisimulan natin sa pag-define. So the first part of the session will basically give us a baseline, no? Pag ginamit natin yung salitang fake news, ano ba yung ibig sabihin natin, no? We also hear the terms misinfo, disinfo, infodemic, and a lot of other terms that are related to this thing called fake news, no? Pag-uusapan natin 'yan sa unang bahagi ng ating session. After nun, pupunta tayo sa tinatawag nating political economy of fake news, no? Kasi ayaw naman natin na pag-usapan lang yung fake news it as if it exists in a vacuum. Ibig sabihin, ayaw natin na pag-aralan yung fake news na parang hiwalay siya sa nangyayari sa paligid natin, na as if hiwalay siya sa usapin ng politika at ekonomiya. So, this session is intended for us to situate or to contextualize the very topic of fake news in the Philippine context, particularly when we talk about Philippine politics and Philippine economics. No, pag-usapan natin 'yan. Pangatlo, no? Ayaw naman natin na dire-diretso ako magsalita, so we will also be giving a time for our participants, the over 200 participants all in all, no, in Facebook and in Zoom, to work on this activity we call DIY fake news headlines or do-it-yourself fake news headlines. And then we'll have a break. After the break, itutuloy natin yung pagsagot natin sa tanong na whys and hows, right? We'll explore several concepts that explain for us why fake news spread. Here, the science and technology part of the fake news problem will be given emphasis, no? Ano ba yung papel ng social media algorithms? Ano ba yung pagpapaliwanag ng mga psychologists and behavioral scientists why fake news exists and why fake news spread? And then towards the last part of our discussion, pag-usapan na natin, no, ano ba yung mga solusyon? Ano ba yung mga pwede nating gawin? So earlier, you already had a glimpse of a project that we are working on in OOTB, yung tinatawag namin na iwas fake safety steps. So we'll talk about that, and we'll look at all of these other ways that we need to explore and consider in order to respond to the disinformation problem that we are facing. All right, simulan natin sa very straightforward na tanong, ano ba ang fake news? Pero bago yon, siguro napapansin ninyo, no, na yung salitang fake news ay nilagay namin sa loob ng quotation marks, no? At ito ay deliberate. Pag nilalagay natin ang isang salita sa loob ng quotation marks, maraming ibig sabihin ito, no? Pero isa dun sa intention why we put a word or a phrase in quotation marks is because we want to give you the impression that when we use this term, there are a lot of different meanings, no? Na kapag ginamit ko yung salitang fake news, for example, in a conversation, maaring iba to sa kung paano ito ginagamit ng ibang tao in a different context. So it's very important that when we use the term fake news, while we all are aware of it, we all use it almost in our day-to-day conversations, marami itong iba't ibang ibig sabihin. At yun yung gusto nating i-unpack sa simula ng ating session. So, I'm using this reference, paper published in 2019 by Egelhofer and Letscheler. No? This is open access, so if you feel like reading the entire piece, you can just Google the title of this study and you can read the entire journal article. But for today, no, syempre, papasadahan lang natin yung pinakapunto ng papel na ito. According to Egelhofer and Letscheler, when we define fake news, we have at least two ways of defining it. No? Una, fake news as a genre. No? Ibig sabihin ng genre, it's a type, it's a kind of communication, no? Na distinct. So this genre of communication can be described as the deliberate creation of pseudo-journalistic disinformation. So maya-maya lang, chachap-chapin natin yung definition. Ayan. Now, on the flip side, pag sinabi natin na fake news, it's not only this genre of communication, but it's also a label. This is the political instrumentalization of the term that delegitimize news media. No? So pag pinag-aaralan natin yung fake news, no, people who study fake news, most often people are so concerned with this kind of understanding of fake news. No? Pinag-aaralan yung mga iba't ibang mga types of fake news that you find on social media. Pero sabi ni Egelhofer and Letzler, magandang pag-aralan din ito, yung fake news as a label, which I'll talk about more in a bit. Dito muna tayo, no? This is the first way of understanding fake news as a genre. Fake news as a genre has three distinct qualities. I believe this is one of the questions that was included, no, doon sa icebreaker ni Sir Stone earlier. At karamihan sa inyo, no, nakatama. Medyo obvious naman kasi yung sagot, no. Obviously, hindi parte ng quality ng fake news genre yung accuracy. But let's put our attention to these three qualities first, no. Paano ba natin masasabi na isang bagay na nakikita natin online can be rightfully called fake news? Una na dyan, yung pseudo-journalistic format nito. Kung may fake news, meron ding fake bags, fake watches, and all of these fake brands that we are all familiar with, no? I'm sure, no? Marami naman sa inyo ay nakabili na rin ng mga peking kung ano man, no? And I include myself in that, no? And we all have reasons for buying all of these counterfeit products, no? Siguro yung number one nating dahilan mas mura kasi. Pero we still want to be in fashion, right? But when it comes to fake news, the question is, kung meron namang original o meron namang legit na balita, why would people still go for its fake version? Right? But that is for later, no? Yung pagsagot natin sa tanong na why. But the first point that we have to establish when we talk about fake news is how it mimics, right? How it attempts to look like legitimate news, right? So here in the Philippines, we have all of these examples of these fake websites, no? Pag pumunta ka din sa kanilang website, parang kamuka ng legitimate, no? May headline, may picture, may body, may byline, may nagsulat, no? Tapos kahit yung logo ng mga fake news websites, ginagaya din sa original, no? Let's look at this example. This is not a fake news website. Instead, it's a fake audio, right? A fake recording of someone who sounds like the popular broadcaster Jessica Soho. Let's listen in.
Everybody, please listen. Just in case lang, if you have time tomorrow to go out, mag-stock kayo ng food, okay? That will last for a week or that will last until the 30th. Wala namang masama kung mag-i-stock kayo ng food. In case mag-announce si Duterte ng martial law, ng total lockdown or martial law.
All right. I don't know if this particular audio has reached your feeds or your messenger apps nung simula ng lockdown. But when this particular audio got viral, napakabilis, no? People, ang bilis naman mag-share, di ba? Ang bilis mag-forward ng mga ganitong klase ng mga audio files online. Dumating sa point that GMA had to release a statement saying that no, this is not Jessica Soho. This is someone else pretending to be Jessica Soho. So, dito makikita natin no yung unang quality ng fake news, how it attempts to look legit by copying the presentation of your legitimate journalistic content. Ikalawang quality, the quality of being low in facticity. Ibig sabihin ng low in facticity ay kulang sa pagkatotoo, no? Hindi natin sinasabi na completely false because we know that there are a lot of fake news items that are partly true but they are also partly false, no? If this is not your first time attending a webinar or a class, a lecture on fake news and disinformation, you probably have seen this framework before because this is one of the most widely circulated frameworks on disinformation. Ito ay galing sa First Draft organization. Here, you will find the 7 types of misinformation and disinformation. From the fabricated content, ibig sabihin, completely inimbento yung laman, to all of these other types that can have a grain of truth in it. Sabi nga ng mga scholars, mas delikado pa yung mga klase ng fake news na medyo totoo, no? Kasi people will have the feeling na, uy, parang totoo to or parang dapat ko tong paniwalaan. But the problem sometimes with these kinds of types is they use some truth but misleading, no? Iba or mali yung pagkakagamit, so it still falls under this umbrella of misinfo and disinfo, no? So ito yung ilan sa mga example ng mga fabricated content, no? Completely inimbento, ang bilis kumalat sa mga chat groups, ang bilis kumalat sa mga closed na Facebook groups and other social media platforms na some are very obvious, no? Na parang hindi ka naman talaga basta maniniwala kasi out of this world, no? Or too far-fetched. Pero marami din dito sa mga fabricated content na ito na kahit na parang sobrang inimbento, people would still fall for it, no? Isa ito naman dun sa isa sa mga popular na example ng tinatawag natin na manipulated content, no? So when this photo got viral on social media, I think this was last year, the image is attached to a headline and a caption saying that these people, these individuals were lining up in front of these armaments or surrenderies, no? Mga rebel surrenderies sila. So this was first published, I think, by GMA News, no? And other media platforms. So when they did that, ito na, no? Ilan sa mga netizens nakakita na, uy, bakit parang lumulutang yung paa ng mga tao doon sa picture? Bakit parang may mali, no? So, a lot of these netizens were quick to point out, edited to. Parang pinagdikit lang yung dalawang photos together, right? And so, the source of the photo, which happens to be the Philippine Army, had to answer, no? And one of the ways that the government answered in response to these calls was that, sabi to nung Malacanang, sabi nila nagkausap na daw sila nung ni Secretary Lorenzana. Ang paliwanag sa kanya ay yung dalawang pictures na yon pinagsama lang. Kumbaga authentic pareho yon, no? Hindi naman manipulate. Pinagsama yung dalawang photos sa isang picture. So that's not manipulation. So, nung nabasa ko tong balita na to, talagang yung utak ko parang I'm not sure how I should think, how I should accept this kind of explanation. Kasi the very fact that you put two photos together, no matter how authentic those two photos are separately, the mere act of putting two things together is already manipulation. No? That already invokes the act of photoshopping things together. No? And the idea of putting things together that are not really together is already an attempt to deceive people. No? So we can always argue that the two photos are accurate, right? Kapag magkahiwalay sila, pero nung pinagsama na sila, there's ethics involved there, and there's really that intention of making people believe this is just taken in one place, no? So pwede nating i-describe yung photo na yon na low in facticity. Ngayon, doon sa pangatlong characteristic, the main motivations for deception are either political, ideological, or financial. The creation of fake news genre is always intentional, while the dissemination may be unintentional. So this is when we differentiate these two terms that we often use, no? Yung term na misinformation and disinformation. Pag sinabing misinformation, ito yung hindi mo sinasadya, na misinform ka lang. Ibig sabihin, mali yung alam mo, and then pinost mo yun online. Pero hindi mo sinasadya. Right? Disinformation, on the other hand, is when you deliberately, ibig sabihin, sinadya mong gumawa ng something na mali, something na hindi totoo, something na makakapanloko or makakapanlin lang ng tao. Right? So you can argue that when GMA posted, right, when GMA posted that photo, they were just misinformed. Of course, we should call them out because they should have known better, right? Kasi nakita nga ng ibang tao, pero yung nag-post noon from GMA News, hindi niya nakita. But still, we give them the benefit of the doubt. No? Mukhang hindi naman nila sinadya. But the people who sent that photo to GMA, that's when you start asking questions. Deliberate ba yon? Sinadya ba nila, no? Na i-edit yung photo na yon? I suppose, yes. Right? There's this third kind that we don't use often, we don't hear often, but it's very much part of the information disorder ecosystem. It's called malinformation. This is when you use actual, legitimate information, right? You send it out. Totoo siya, no? Hindi siya false, hindi siya fake. But the intention is harmful. There is intention to harm. So pwede natin gamitin ditong example, yung mga showbiz balita, no? Na kinakalat as chismis, no? Kinakalat siya as chismis. And then later on, lilitaw na totoo pala yung chismis na yon. So for example, yung mga nabuntis, for example, ng mga artista, and then kumakalat, ay, buntis si ganyan, blah, blah, blah. And then later on, you'll find out, actually, buntis pala siya at nanganak na siya. So, totoo yung balita. But the very act of distributing it, it's meant to harm the person. So, it's malinformation. All right. Yun yung fake news as a genre, no? Ngayon, pupunta tayo dun sa another way of understanding fake news, this time as a label, no? Nauso, sumikat at naging popular ang salitang fake news hindi lamang dahil sa malawak na pagkalat nito sa social media, kundi pati na rin sa madalas na paggamit ng mga politiko sa salitang fake news para i-label ang mga independent news media and to delegitimize them. Ibig sabihin ng delegitimize ay para siraan yung kanilang reputasyon. Of course, the best example we have here is the former president of the US, no? He has a penchant for, pointing at reporters tuwing may press con. Talagang duduruin yan. Sasabihin niya, you are fake news, right? Out of nowhere. And the accusation is meant to ruin the reputation of these media organizations. Now, we don't really have to look too far away because even here in the Philippines, we have these kinds of attempts, no, from some of our politicians. Maybe not as in your face as Trump, but we know that there are a lot of attempts wherein legitimate news organizations are being, you know, um, labeled as fake news, not because they produced something that is inaccurate, but simply because some political forces don't want them, right? One of the very important case studies here is when the Manila Times, which is a known newspaper who is pro administration, released a matrix that tags Rappler, Verifiles, and PCIJ. All of these three are media organizations. Um, they were placed in a matrix that supposedly explains how these organizations are involved in some sort of conspiracy to dethrone President Duterte. Now, when journalists asked the Times and asked Malacanang where did they get this matrix, wala na silang na-provide. So, this particular example again shows us how fake news can be weaponized. No? Pag sinabi nating weaponization, this is when the very label of fake news can be used to harm people. No? So the next time you use the term fake news, no, in your day-to-day conversations or when you post about it online, do not assume that you all share the same understanding of what it is. So it's very important, no, just to be safe, put it inside quotation marks. Another suggestion is instead of using the term fake news, just use all of these other terms that are more accurate, no? More accurate in a sense na mas specific yung ibig sabihin nila, no? At mas alam natin na pag ginamit natin yung salita na bad journalism, that is bad journalism. That is not Rappler, for example, being fake news, but maybe they done something wrong or they done something that is unethical, then you refer to it as bad journalism. Now, you also have other posts online that are historical revisionist, no? That are meant to revise history. So instead of just calling it as fake news, tawagin natin sila for what they are. Just some ways to define some of these terms. Rumors, alam naman natin to, no? This is characterized by the lack of evidence and widespread social transmission. Sabi nila yung mga Pilipino mahilig sa chismis, no? I'm not sure if it's something that is limited or exclusive to us Filipinos or it's something that is just human nature, no? Parang meron tayong itch sa katawan na kapag nakatanggap tayo ng isang quote-unquote balita, kahit na hindi pa kompleto yung detalye, we feel like sharing it to a friend of ours. Natatandaan nyo itong nangyari nung August this year, no? August lang. Kumalat yung chismis na kapag hindi ka nagpabakuna, hindi ka makakatanggap ng ayuda. No? So kumalat siya, siguro aided not only by hindi lang siya sa physical na chismisan sa kanto, kundi syempre nakatulong yung mga social media devices, nagkalat sa mga apps, kalat sa Messenger siguro, sa WhatsApp ng mga tao. Uy, Mare, kailangan na natin magpabakuna kasi hindi daw tayo makakatanggap ng ayuda. And what happened when this rumor spread out? No? Andiyan na, overnight, biglang nagdagsaan ang mga tao sa Las Piñas, sa Quezon City, sa Manila para magpabakuna, no? And obviously it worsened the situation kasi nagkaroon ng crowding dito sa mga vaccination sites na ito. That is rumor, no? Although of course, as you see here, no, it's very comfortable, it's very convenient for people to just use the term fake news, no? hindi ko na alam kung ano ang naging update dito sa balita na 'to. Personally, I don't think it's not so much about peddlers sharing false information, but it's more about the human nature, no, to fall for rumors and to spread out information that is not yet verified. Next, yung idea ng conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theory is an effort to explain some event or practice by reference to the machinations of powerful people who attempt to conceal their role. Sa madaling salita, ang ibig sabihin ng conspiracy theory is when we think na merong mga powerful people, mayaman at makapangyarihan ng mga tao na nagkuntsabahan, no? Nagkaisa para gumawa ng something evil, no? Nung simula ng COVID-19 pandemic, this is a very popular conspiracy theory na tinatawag na plandemic, no? Sabi ng ilang mga conspiracy theorists, yun daw pandemya ay pinlano, no? It's something that is deliberate, dinevelop daw yung COVID-19 bilang isang bioweapon sa isang lab sa China. Of course, this kind of, this kind of story is attractive for a lot of people. Kasi parang, uy, paano nga kaya, no? Paano nga kaya kung si Bill Gates ay gusto lang niya tayong pagkakitaan at umimbento siya ng pandemic, no? I mean, sa dami ng mga what do you call this? Apocalyptic movies, no? Mga post-apocalyptic movies na pinapanood natin sa Hollywood, no? Parang pagka naka-receive tayo ng gantong klase ng kwento, nakapanood tayo ng video on the pandemic, mapipik talaga yung interest ng tao. But then again, it's just a conspiracy, no? It's just a theory that is not proven, no? Next, yung konsepto ng propaganda. Medyo masalimuot, no, yung usapin ng propaganda lalo sa konteksto ng elections because we can always argue that everything is propaganda, no? Anything that is used by a person to convince another person can be referred to as propaganda. But this is a very good way to define what propaganda is, no? It's a deliberate, systematic attempt to shape perceptions, direct behavior to achieve a response that furthers the desired intent of the propagandist. Alam nyo kung ano ang problema natin sa propaganda? It's when it's indifferent to the truth, no? Kasi matatawag natin na ang isang bagay ay propaganda if gusto nga nitong i-convince yung isang tao to believe a certain idea or to believe a certain cause. Now, it's not entirely wrong because we all do that, no? We campaign for certain advocacies, we campaign for certain ideas. Ngayon, nagkakaproblema lang sa propaganda, it's when it's indifferent to the truth, no? Kapag gumagamit na siya ng mga inimbentong bagay just to forward a certain advocacy or a certain idea. Panghuli, yung konsepto ng infodemic. So, sa panahon ng pandemya, isa sa palalo ng ating sitwasyon ay yung tinatawag na infodemic or the overabundance of information, some accurate and some not, that makes it hard for people to find trustworthy sources and reliable guidance when they need it. So, it's the World Health Organization who coined this term, no? At sabi nila, isa ito dun sa mga problema na nagpapalala ng sitwasyon natin ngayon. Kasi sa dami ng impormasyon na makikita sa ating mga palad through our devices, ay nahihirapan ang tao na makapag-decide in an informed manner, no? At yun nga yung tinatawag na infodemic. So ilan ito, no? Doon sa mga example ng mga memes at mga videos at tweets na kumakalat online, napakabilis, na pinagkukunan natin ng impormasyon. Kasi alam naman natin, people do not only make decisions and understand world events simply through news articles and news videos. Hindi na lang balita, no, yung pinagkukunan ng tao ng impormasyon, kundi pati mga memes at kung ano-anong sari-saring post online ay pinagbabasihan natin ng ating pagdedesisyon. And this is something that is very, very, very dangerous in the context of a health crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic. Ngayon, pupunta tayo dun sa tanong na why? And why is there and how does fake news spread, no? Kasi pagkatapos nating i-define kung kung ano ba yung fake news, ang marapat na tanong na isunod natin dito ay bakit nga ba? No? Bakit nga ba merong fake news at paano ba ito kumakalat? Now, as I've said, we're trying to discuss the topic of fake news in the context of the Philippines. And the year 2016 is a very important year in the timeline of the disinformation problem in the Philippines because this is when disinformation and the use of fake news was utilized, right? Was utilized by politicians to forward their ideas, to forward certain candidates. At natawag nga yung Pilipinas nung panahon na to, noong 2016, as the quote-unquote patient zero. Bakit patient zero? Kasi tayo daw yung kauna-unahan na nabiktima ng disinformation. Nauna pa tayo sa US at sa UK at sa ilang malalaking bansa. Because when we had our elections in 2016, nakita ng mga scholar, nakita ng mga pag-aaral na Pilipinas yung isa sa talagang pinagpugaran, no? At pinag-aralan ng ilan sa mga information fake news peddlers kung paano ito magagamit sa eleksyon, right? Isa nga doon sa mga whistleblowers ng Cambridge Analytica, sabi nila Philippines daw is the petri dish, no? Ibig sabihin ng petri dish, tayo daw yung pinag-eksperimentohan, no? Bago i-apply sa US, tinry daw muna nila sa Pilipinas yung mga ways how to deceive people. Bakit Pilipinas? There are 3 reasons. Because we have a questionable rule of law, we have high social media usage, and we have corrupt politicians. No? Dito na lang tayo mag-focus dun sa high use of social media here in the Philippines. No? At syempre, kung maraming Pilipino ang mahilig mag-social media, it's very obvious bakit yan ang pinipili nating lugar kung saan tayo manloloko at magpapakalat ng maling impormasyon. Sabi dito sa pag-aaral ni Jonathan Ong and Jason Cabañas from 2018, this is how disinformation ecosystem looks like here in the Philippines. I believe you still recall from 2016 when, the first few months of the Duterte administration, nagkaroon ng sunod-sunod na mga Senate hearing, no? So, in the Senate, the senators invited some of these so-called fake news peddlers, no? Syempre nangunguna na diyan isa sa mga pinakakilala si Mocha Uson, right? Who was running the Mocha Uson blog. You also have Thinking Pinoy and all of these other social media influencers. So, a lot of bad things were said to them, no? Masasama silang tao, niloloko nila yung madlang Pilipino, blah 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 blah. Isa sa mga nakalimutan na pag-usapan sa Senate hearing is how the disinformation ecosystem actually looks like. Instead of focusing our hate and our grudge on these influencers, sabi ni Jonathan Ong and Jason Cabañas, dapat dito tayo tumingin, no? Kung paano yung mga advertising and PR executives are making the most out of all of the vulnerabilities of our politics here in the Philippines, no? Sabi nila dito, it's the ad and PR agencies and executives who are actually running the show and who are raking so much profit, no? Speaking of profit, right? This is also a very important dimension of the fake news dilemma, no? Bakit may fake news? Dahil sa pera, no? Nakakalungkot isipin that mas malaki pa ang sinasahod ng isang online troll kaysa sa katulad kong isang guro, no? Na this is also very alarming because ngayon, no, sa paparating na eleksyon, this is something that we all expect. Maybe some of our students here even can be led into these kinds of opportunities, no? Na out of nowhere, baka makatanggap ka ng message online, uy, meron ako ditong racket para sa'yo, 10,000 lang, pero mag-share ka ng mga false headlines. Would you accept it? Right? Paano kung kulang ka talaga sa sahod? Pandemya pa ngayon, no? Wala kang kinikita. That looks very attractive. That kind of offer looks very attractive, right? At ano yung laban natin dito kung wala tayong magandang klase ng ekonomiya? Let's skip this part so that we can now go to the fun part of our activity, no? The fun part of our session. Ganito yung gagawin natin, no? I will be asking you to write your own fake news headline that targets Filipino students, no? So bilang karamihan ng ating mga audience ngayong hapon ay mga estudyante, I believe kilala nyo ang mga sarili ninyo at alam ninyo yung mga klase ng balita na pwede ninyong i-click, no, at magiging very attractive for you kahit mali ito. So what I want you to do is go to slido.com. Okay, go to your browser and go to slido.com and put the code 257607, or you can scan the QR code, no? Pagka pumunta kayo diyan, punta kayo din sa Q&A, right? Dun sa Q&A na tab, instead of typing a question, that's where you will type your fake news headline. Okay? Ngayon, kung gusto ninyong manalo ng load, Kyle, meron tayong pa-load galing sa DOST. Isulat ninyo yung pangalan ninyo, no? Meron kasing option na maglagay ng pangalan. Okay? Once makita na natin, no? I'm monitoring the Slido right now. Once makita natin na meron ng mga sagot dyan sa Slido, ay pwede niyo itong i-like. At kung sino yung mga headlines na may pinakamaraming likes, yun yung i-consider nating panalo dito, no? Let me just try it first and see if it's going to show up in your devices. Una. No. Okay. Okay. I tried posting. Ayan, meron ng sagot si Jose Miguel Garin. Nakita ko rin may sagot si ML. I would love for you to use your actual name, no? Especially if you want to join the game, no? At naging eligible kayo doon sa prizes natin. For the others, if you don't feel like writing your name, okay lang din naman. Okay? Ayan. Sige. So far, meron na akong dalawang answers dito. We will ask our friends from DOST to actually share screen in a bit, no? At maipakita nila yung ating answers sa Slido right now. Okay. I think I should stop share. Okay. Actually, I can do the screen sharing. Let me just for you. Ayan na si. Okay. So you can see right now some of the answers of our participants. Just important request, no? Important request para sa ating mga participants. I know some of the best fake news can be very provocative, no? Can make use of bad words and foul words. So iwasan natin 'yon, no? Iwasan muna natin yung mga ganong salita. Ano lang, yun lang tayo sa mga safe for work na headlines, no? Bawal yung mga NSFW headlines. Okay, ayan. Nakikita na natin. So far leading yung headline ni Jose Miguel Garin. Face to face, now mandatory to all levels. Duterte to sign bill soon. Okay, parang gusto ko ring i-like yan. Diba? Imagine ninyo, no, pagka makita ninyo itong mga headlines na to sa feed ninyo, how would you react? Right? What would be your first impression if you read these headlines? Sabi ni Anonymous, online kopyahan, students versus teachers versus parents. Interesting. Okay, again, yung reminder ko, kapag nakapagsagot na kayo, kapag nailagay niyo na yung headline ninyo, read the other entries and then like, no? Like the items that you think are best written. Ibig sabihin, pinaka-effective. Yung tipong kapag nakita mo to sa feed mo, ay i-share mo ito automatically. Okay? Sige. I will request, yeah, I think I can do that. I will go back to my screen sharing. So as you guys do the activity, no, some of you might be thinking, bakit kaya kami pinapasulat nito ni Sir Marlon ng fake news headlines? Akala ko ba ayaw niya kaming maging mga troll, no? Okay. Obviously, I'm not trying to turn you into fake news peddlers. I'm not trying to make you consider or think about being one. There's actually a science behind this activity, no? Ito yung tinatawag na inoculation theory. Siguro yung ilan sa inyo, no, ay nabakunahan na, no? At yung iba ay nakapila na rin para mabakunahan, hopefully soon. The idea of vaccination, it's like putting in a weakened version of the virus. So para sa mga COVID-19 vaccines, kumbaga ang idea niya is nilalagyan tayo ng weak version of coronavirus in our bodies so that our bodies will learn how to fight off future infection, no? Oops, nakapag-annotate si April. Ayan. Ganun din yung idea ng activity natin today, no? While you are writing your own fake news headlines, what it does, it supposedly expose you to weakened versions or to weakened examples of the most common techniques that are used in generating fake news. Para kapag na-expose na kayo sa actual fake news, alam nyo na, no? Alam nyo na ito ay hindi totoo at ito ay hindi dapat paniwalaan. This inoculation theory, you can read more about it in this link, no? Yung https://inoculation.science. Sa inoculationscience.com, nag-develop sila ng iba't ibang mga games. Isa dito yung goviralgame.com, which is freely accessible to everyone. So I invite you to try it out, no? Dito sa goviralgame.com, nilista nila yung 3 sa pinaka-common na techniques na ginagamit sa paggawa ng fake news. Titingnan natin no dun sa mga entries natin kung sino yung pinaka maganda yung pagkakasulat ng fake news at ano yung mga techniques na ginamit nila. While we do that, we can take a quick break. Forward to the second part of our session, no? So natapos tayo sa first part na define natin ang fake news, napag-usapan natin ang political economy ng fake news, at nagawa natin itong activity na DIY fake news headlines. So pupunta tayo sa second half at titingnan natin yung iba pang mga konsepto na napakahalaga para sa pag-aaral at pag-unawa sa usapin ng fake news. Sisimulan natin yan sa tinatawag natin na psychological vulnerabilities to fake news. So these are our weaknesses. Sabi ng mga behavioral scientists, human beings are more or less wired to fall for fake news. So we shouldn't really be so mad at ourselves for falling for fake news. Because sabi ng mga siyensya, in one way or another, meron tayo ay naka-built-in yon sa mga utak natin. And for example, if ever you encounter the headline "Face-to-face now mandatory to all levels" in your newsfeed, there is a high chance that you might believe it because of this thing called confirmation bias. No, I'm not sure. Maybe most of you would want to get back to your schools, no, and get started with the face-to-face again. So kapag makita mo to sa feed mo, meron kang confirmation bias no? Meron kang gustong paniwalaan, meron kang gustong mabasa at makita. So it's a tendency for human beings to share and to seek such kind of informations, no? Now, kung yun naman ay tungkol sa face-to-face classes, siguro not very harmful, no? Although it's still harmful because it's false information. But if we talk about political candidates, for example, and Philippine politics in general, no, there's a lot of danger and harm involved. A lot of people have certain biases in terms of politics and certain ideas that they want to hear. So, no matter how outrageous, outlandish, or false an information is, for as long as a person believes it, there's a tendency for them to still share the false information. Another way to explain our psychological vulnerabilities is this thing called mere exposure effect, right? When people are repeatedly exposed to the same stimuli, such as certain faces, they grow to like those stimuli more than those that they have encountered less. This follows that when we are repeatedly exposed to an idea, typically from many sources, we are more likely to adopt and reshare it. Ngayon, ang problema, ang ating mga social media ay dinisenyo na kung saan yung mga kadalasan nating nakikita sa ating mga feed ay yung mga bagay na gusto rin nating makita. So for example, if you are a huge fan of BTS, Blackpink, or whatever K-pop group, it's almost expected, no, na marami sa lumalabas sa feed mo ay music videos, pictures, clips from TV shows featuring these K-pop idols, no? But what if again, ilagay natin yan sa context ng politics, right? We create this so-called echo chamber, no? Probably have encountered this as well, which explains how social media platforms more or less make these vulnerabilities of people worse, no? No? Nandiyan na yan Nandiyan na yung vulnerabilities na yan. So if you spend more time on social media and if you're not aware that such vulnerabilities exist, then it can be a bad situation for you. Panghuli, na psychological vulnerability na sinama ko sa slide ay yung tinatawag na cognitive closure. This is especially true in the time of COVID-19. Cognitive closure, this is how we can explain it. It's when humans inherently desire to eliminate ambiguity and uncertainty, especially during troubled times like COVID-19 pandemic. Hence, we seek swift clarity or closure, which can make us vulnerable to ideas that offer clear black and white messaging. So, sa panahon ng COVID-19, ang dami nating hindi sigurado, right? And we don't want ambiguity. We don't want uncertainty. We want closure, right? And when we want closure, kahit na marami pang malabo, right? There's a tendency for us to rely on black and white messaging. Ano ba yung black and white messaging? It's when we try to evade complexity and we go for yes or no questions or yes or no answers. For example, we have a lot of issues of corruption in the Philippines, right? Whether that's national or local. Now, instead of really uncovering the complexity of these corruption issues, a lot of people will just settle for black and white messaging. Sinabi na kasi ni ganyan, hindi naman corrupt si ganyan. End of story. And that is very problematic. That is very dangerous. Si ivermectin, okay lang naman daw, hindi naman harmful. So, might as well take it. Black and white messaging. So instead of giving ourselves more time to think thoroughly and think and consider all details, yun yung problema. This is one of the most recent developments, if we can call it, in the field of technology and social media. This is when the whistleblower Frances Haugen said that Facebook has been deliberately designing its platform, the app, to be less safe for people. Sabi niya dun sa isa niyang interview sa palabas na 60 Minutes, Facebook has realized that if they change the algorithm to be safer, meaning to have less hate speech, to have less false information, people will spend less time on the site and they'll click less on ads and they'll make less money. If there's a very simplistic way of explaining to the audience how social media platforms like Facebook generate money, usually it can be presented in this simplistic manner, right? All of these personal data that we put out, meaning all of the pages that we like, all of the selfies that we post, all of the ads that we click on, all of those are collected and turned into data. And that data, those data points are enter the brain of the system, and we have these so-called algorithms, right, that decide for us what kind of content goes back to us. So again, we have this imagery of the filter bubble, where all of us are contained in these small silos or small bubbles, where the things that we put out just go back to us. Right? We're not even talking about the economic side of it anymore. We're just concerned with how false information stays in a system where you have people who are really vulnerable, right? People who are not so conscious about their cognitive biases, people who join a lot of closed, hyper partisan Facebook groups or YouTube pages. So the more that they isolate themselves, right, within these filter bubbles, the more they become vulnerable. No? And that's something that we ought to solve and we ought to find solutions to. Another concept, I hope you guys are still with me and are still interested in the conversation that we're having. This one, it's not so much about science and technology anymore, but it refers to how we can describe the very society that we live in today, not only in the Philippines, but perhaps in the whole world. In 2016, the World Post-Truth was named the Word of the Year by the Oxford Dictionary. No? So, obvious bakit 2016 naging Word of the Year yung Post-Truth. Kasi nga, 2016 was when Brexit happened. This is when UK pulled out of the European Union, and also 2016 was when Donald Trump was elected. Now, interestingly, 2016 nga rin nangyari yung elections natin sa Philippines. So, dapat relate na relate tayo dito sa idea ng post-truth. Sabi ng mga scholars, post-truth is an adjective relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. Medyo mouthful, pero ang ibig sabihin nito, sabi sa cartoon, sa post-truth world daw, ang tao ganito mag-reason out. I believe, therefore I'm right. Mas mahalaga para sa tao yung kanyang personal na mga paniniwala imbes na doon sa objective facts that are in front of us. Sabi pa ng ibang scholar, in the post-truth world, we have the blurring of boundaries between lying and truth-telling and between fact and opinion and fact and fiction. No? Napakabilis na para sa mga tao na magsinungaling. No? And it's not only limited to our politicians. Right? A lot of people are very comfortable with saying things that are not necessarily truthful. No? Maybe it's not so much that people are evil, but it could also be because we see it everywhere, so we feel it's normal already. So we also do it. No? Another way to look at the post-truth theory is when effectiveness becomes a measure for truthfulness. Ano yung ibig sabihin nito? Let's look at this cartoon. No? Of course, this is a play on the popular TV game show Jeopardy. So imagine the host of Jeopardy saying, I'm sorry, Jeannie, your answer was correct, but Kevin shouted his incorrect answer over yours, so he gets the point. Nakakatawang isipin, no, na imagine mo na mapanood ito sa isang game show. Yung isang contestant, sinabi niya yung tamang sagot, pero hindi sa kanya binigay yung puntos. Binigay yung puntos dun sa tao na mas malakas yung sagot kahit na mali ang sagot niya. Now, if you put that in the context of our current world today, we have a lot of journalists, reporters trying to do their job well, right? Trying to give out the facts, trying to provide us with accurate, reliable information. But people, right? There are people, we can refer to them as post-truth publics, who instead of listening to journalists, listening to objective facts and information, they would go, right? They would go for all of these other social media influencers, politicians, opinion leaders who are not necessarily truthful, right? Who do not believe in facts, but they are just so effective, no? At paano ba natin nasasabi na effective ang isang tao online, no? Kapag sila yung lagi mong nakikita sa feed, kapag sila yung laging malakas yung dating, kapag sila ay nagmumura, for example, or kapag sila ay umiiyak, for example, right? Sometimes even if they don't say the facts, when they show emotion, when they say foul words, or when they shout and when they do all of these theatrics, for some people, ang dating sila pa yung mas believable. Now we have arrived at the very last part of our session. Of course, I don't want to end our session with the impression na, sir, parang wala nang solusyon or parang wala na ata tayong magagawa. no? It's as if I have painted the picture that we are in some deep trouble, no? Well, it's true, no? I think from the discussion that we have so far, by this time you should already have the um awareness and consciousness that we are in a crisis situation, no? Crisis na po ang usapin ng fake news. And we can see it on multiple levels: political level, economic level, um, science and technology level. Marami, no? Maraming branches, maraming layers na pwede nating tingnan kung gaano kalala na yung ating sitwasyon. But again, as I was saying, there are still answers and there are still ways for us to address and respond to the fake news problem. At sisimulan ko doon sa proyekto na kasalukuyan namin ginagawa sa OOTB. Napanood nyo kanina yung isa sa mga videos na pinroduce namin last year. If nakikinig kayo doon sa video earlier, isa dun sa mga lines doon ay wala pang lunas sa COVID-19, no? Kasi nung pinroduce namin yon, nagsisimula pa lang yung talks tungkol sa vaccine. But obviously, we have the vaccine already and it's important that we get vaccinated. Meron akong comparison kanina, no, nung inoculation theory sa vaccination. Yes, we can say that if we are aware of our biases, we can say that we are somehow vaccinated against fake news. But obviously, it's way more than that. There's no one solution. Kahit naman yung vaccine sa COVID, di ba? Kahit naman may vaccine na, alam natin na napakarami pang dapat nating gawin para tayo'y makabalik dun sa dati nating normal. So, ito yung sinasabi ko, no, na napakaraming approaches to responding to disinformation. Kumbaga, ang tawag natin dito ay multi-pronged approach, right? Multi-pronged, iba't ibang atake. Dito tayo nagfa-fall under. What we're doing right now and what we have been trying to do for the past how many years in OOTB is doing media literacy projects. So ito yung mga educational initiatives that help people, right? Help the public to be more aware of this information. Now, hindi sapat yung ginagawa natin. Hindi sapat yung media literacy. That's why we have also all of these other responses like fact-checking, right? And investigative reports done by our courageous journalists, courageous and brave and resilient media organizations. Pero hindi pa rin sapat, no? Kung media literacy lang at fact-checking ang sagot. We need governments and we need international policymakers to introduce legislative and policy-driven responses. Sa panahon ng eleksyon, no? Marami pa rin tayong kulang, no? Dumaan na ang 2016, dumaan ang 2019. May mga improvements ng ginawa ang COMELEC, but still there are a lot of suggestions and recommendations that they haven't really responded to, no? Like kung paano natin mamomonitor truthfully yung spending ng ating mga politiko sa social media campaigns nila. I know that's difficult to monitor, but there should still be rules and protocols regarding that are still not present at the moment. At syempre, nandyan din yung mga responses involving our favorite social media platforms. Kasi alam naman natin, no, na kalakhan ng disinformation ay nag-exist, right? Sa social media platforms. So napakahalaga na meron din silang ambag at meron silang mga gagawin in order to solve our problem. So, in OOTB, ang ginagawa namin ay yung proyekto namin na Iwas Fake. Let's watch this video which summarizes ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng Iwas Fake.
Paano ba makakaiwas sa fake news? Paano ba ito malalabanan? Ano ang mga dapat nating gawin upang mapataas ang ating immunity laban sa mga mali at mapanlinlang na impormasyon? Narito ang 4 na steps ng iwas fake. Una ay ikalma ang sarili. Mahalagang huminto at maging kalmado tuwing online. Karamihan ng fake news ay dinisenyo upang i-trigger o pukawin ang ating galit, takot, lungkot at maging pagkatuwa. Ugaliing mag-practice ng emotional skepticism o yung pagdududa sa sariling damdamin o inisyal na reaksyon sa isang post online. Gaya sa COVID, ang fake news ay marami ring signs and symptoms o yung mga clue na dapat mo nang pagdudahan ng isang post. Ilan dyan ay kung ito ay obviously edited, kinopy-paste lang sa chat, at kung ito ay live video na wala man lang detalyeng kasama. Tandaan ang second step, W, huwag basta maniwala. Ang pagdududa sa mga impormasyon online ay para lang ding pagsusuot ng face mask. Minsan tayo ay nakakalimot pero kailangan lang talagang masanay. Responsibilidad ng bawat isa ang pagpuksa sa fake news at sa coronavirus. Kaya wala dapat tayong excuse na hindi gawin ang ikatlong step ng iwas fake. Ano ito? A. For alamin ang source at konteksto ng bawat impormasyong dumadaan sa iyo. Kasama dito ang simpleng pag-check kung katiwa-tiwala ba ang source ng isang post, pati na ang paghahanap ng iba pang impormasyon na makakapagkumpirma sa isang bagay na hindi mo nasisiguro. Huling step, S for salain bago i-share at sitahin ang nagkakalat ng mali. Hindi masosolusyonan ang pagkalat ng fake news at coronavirus kung sarili lang natin ang ating iniisip. Papel ng bawat isa sa atin ang tiyaking wala tayong niloloko at ligtas ang kapwa natin mula sa mga manloloko. Tandaan ang 4 na steps ay ikalma ang sarili. W, huwag basta maniniwala. A, alamin ang source at konteksto ng impormasyon. At S, salain bago i-share at sitahin ang nagkakalat ng mali. IWAS, iwas fake. Praktisin, isapuso at ugaliin. Para sa libreng remote learning resources tungkol sa fake news at infodemic, punta na sa ootbmedialiteracy.org/iwasfake. Ang Iwas Fake Remote Learning Resources ay hatid sa inyo ng Out-of-the-Box Media Literacy Initiative sa pagtataguyod ng US Embassy in Manila at Tech Camp Taipei.
All right. It's our EWAS Fake project. Let me just share a quick story about it. We developed the campaign. It started out as a very simple online campaign. Early part of the COVID-19 pandemic. This was around March, April. So I was stuck at home. Na-stuck pa rin naman ako sa bahay. Pero ibang klase ng lockdown yung meron tayo nung simula ng COVID-19 pandemic. So I was stuck at home and I was trying to think of a campaign that we can do in OOTB that highlights the similarities between COVID-19 and fake news. Because again, according to the video that you just watched, ang dami nilang similarities, di ba? Mahirap puksain, it's everywhere, and wala pang ang vaccine that time, so parang walang iisang solusyon sa problema. So the campaign was very simple, no? Yung mga letra ng salitang iwas ay inisipan ng steps, no? Na pwedeng gawin at gamitin ng tao bilang gabay sa kanilang pang-araw-araw na pag-deal with at pag-address ng mga information online. Hindi naman bago itong 4 na steps na ito, no? At hindi naman sila na-imbento lang last year, no? So ang usapin ng fact checking has been there, has been around for a while now. But I think the important addition or contribution of the Iwas Fake campaign is really in the first 2 steps, no? Dito sa ikalma ang sarili at wag basta maniniwala. We want to emphasize that when we deal with fake news and disinformation, it's very important that you have emotional skepticism, that you can actually control your emotions and that you know that the way you respond to fake news has a lot to do with your emotional footing and with your cognitive biases. So napakahalaga no. Let's look at this context, for example, no. Context ng election. Out of nowhere sa iyong group chat with your friends, mga Mars, may pera daw pinamimigay si Mayor. Send nyo lang GCash number mo dito. Hanggang 12 noon lang daw bilis. No? So what would you do if you receive a message like this? A, isa-send ko ang number ko right away. B, replyan ko si Mars ng totoo ba to Mars? O C, babalaan ko si Mars dahil baka fake news ito. Malamang may obvious na right answer dito sa question, which is letter C. Pero I'm sure naman, no? I'm sure many of you will either go with A or B if you actually are in this kind of situation. Or a combination of both, no? Re-replyan mo muna si Mars, totoo? Totoo ba to? And then kapag nireplyan ka ni Mars, oo, nag-send na ako. You'll go with B. You'll send your number as well. Of course, some of you might think it's harmless and ano ba naman yung mag-send ka ng number mo sa hindi mo kilalang tao. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. Cybersecurity is a different issue, but it's also important that you are aware of that. No? But then again, just going back to the iwas fake steps, the first step is really to be calm, and whatever you find online, know that you can process information better if you are calm, right? If you are in a mental state where your emotions will not really be super involved, no? Hindi naman natin completely masha-shutdown yung ating emotions kasi yun yung nagpapatao sa atin eh, no? Kasi hindi naman tayo robot, no, na walang mga emosyon, right? So mahalaga yung mga emotions, mahalaga yung galit, mahalaga yung lungkot, mahalaga yung frustration, etc. But when we make important decisions, we should always be conscious na aside from emotions, we should consider facts, we should consider logic. Next. Okay. Punta tayo dito sa A, alamin ang source at konteksto ng impormasyon. Fact-checking is very important, right? But we also know what are the limitations of fact-checking. Of course, journalists and all of these fact-checking organizations are doing a really, really good job. No? Ako, malaki ang respeto ko, no, sa mga fact-checkers kasi yung mga bagay na ayaw nating gawin or hindi nating kayang gawin, they are the ones who do it. Right? But fact-checking is something that we also promote that the general public would do, no? Or would at least consider. But at the same time, alam natin na mahirap ito. Kasi marami sa mga Pilipino ay naka-free Facebook. So kapag ikaw ay nasa Facebook, pag nag-click ka ng link, dadalhin ka nito sa website, tapos kapag wala kang data or wala kang Wi-Fi connection, wala na. End of story na. No? So, syempre, ang general na rule of thumb is, if you see something online and you're not sure about it, is you go to your browser, right? You go to Google or whatever browser search engine you have and find out kung tama. I know that is difficult kasi yung usapin pa lang ng access, usapin pa lang ng internet connection and accessibility of different internet tools ay medyo may kakulangan na tayo. But for those of you, right, for our dear students, for our dear teachers who have the access, right, and who have the capacity to use Google, to counter check, then let's utilize them, no? Napakahalaga na hanapin natin yung source At sa source pa lang kasi marami na tayong madededuce. Ibig sabihin, by just simply knowing where the original source of an information is, we can already presume a lot of things, whether it's reliable or whether it's something that needs further corroboration. Aside from the source, know the context. Ibig sabihin ng context, yung mas malaking picture. Kasi karamihan ng impormasyon na nakukuha natin online, whether it's legit or fake, ay very nugget-sized or bite-sized, no? At for example, kadalasan na nakikita natin sa ating screen, puro quotes ng mga politiko. Ganun na lang yung mga balita, di ba? Laging in quote format. Ito yung sinabi ni ganitong politiko, ito yung sinabi ni ganitong artista, and then that's it. Right? If you want to learn more, at least um, for media organizations who have good practices, nilalagay nila yung link para pwede mong i-click at mapunta ka doon sa actual na story. But for some, minsan wala na ring mga link, no? So kapag nakita mo na yung quote, end of story na, tapos na. So this takes a lot of effort. It will be inconvenient for many of us, right? But this is the kind of challenge that is given to us in the age of infodemic, no? Kailangan may effort tayo na alamin yung konteksto, na magkumpara ng iba't ibang sources. Okay? At panghuli, skip ko na to. At panghuli, yung S, yung salain bago i-share at sitahin ang nagkakalat ng mali. This is very important kasi many of us, if we already know how to fact check, if we already are very confident with our emotional skepticism skills, with our knowledge of cognitive bias, marami sa atin, we stop with A, no? Nagiging iwa lang, no? Nalilimutan natin yung responsibility natin sa ibang tao. Nalilimutan natin na ang fake news naman ay isang community problem. It's a social problem. It's not just a personal issue, right? It's a social issue that we need to take our role in it. So, napakahalaga. Kunyari ito, very basic from Facebook, right? If we see a false information online, report it, right? Take that effort. It will take you just 5 to 10 seconds. Click nyo yung arrow down sa upper right corner. Click report post. Click I think it shouldn't be on Facebook. And click it's a false news story. Very quick. 5-10 seconds, tapos na yung pag-report mo. No? Ano yung nangyayari kapag nag-report ka? This usually goes to the third-party fact-checkers of Facebook, like Verifiles, Rappler, and other organizations. No? And these are the people who fact-check for us. Right? If it's proven to be false, if it's proven to be misleading and problematic, it's either Facebook will take them down or will put a note so that people will know there's a problem with this content. This is just one of the many ways that you can make the effort to report. Other ways is, of course, to join fact-checking organizations, right? There are a lot of fact-checking organizations since 2016 and since the pandemic. Ang daming mga bumuo ng mga fact-checking orgs, and I hope you can come up with your own, no, fact-checking organizations in your own communities. So the E was fake from the campaign. Again, we developed it into a remote learning course that is available, no, free to access online. What we're very proud about it is that we have a Filipino and Bisaya translation for it. So if it's going to be useful for you, then you can find it in our website. And then recently, I think, hindi ko na maalala kung anong buwan namin ni-release. Meron din kaming course 2 and course 3. So all of the items that we have discussed in this session are small parts of course 2 and course 1. So if you would want to learn more about post-truth, for example, or social media algorithms and fake news, go to course 2. Yung pinakahuli naming pinroduce is the home-based news literacy activities. This is meant to be used by parents and their children at home so they can talk about fake news. Isa ito dun sa mga activities under course number 3 where the activity is very simple. No? Using a Venn diagram, what you can do is you can invite someone at home, kapatid mo, tatay mo, anak mo, and you compare what are the things that you find on Facebook, no? Ano ba yung mga post at ano yung mga pages na fina-follow ninyo? So obviously meron kayong mga pagkakapareho, pero madami din kayong mga pagkakaiba. Your Facebook is different from my Facebook. So you might be thinking, ano namang connect nito sa fake news, right? The connect here is again the idea of the filter bubble, right? Or the echo chamber. If you will be more conscious of how small your echo chamber is, you will make an attempt to expand it. No? How do you expand your echo chamber? Mag-follow ka ng mga pages ng hindi mo kasundo sa politika, for example. Or mag-follow ka ng mga pages na fina-follow ng anak mo para makarelate ka dun sa interest ng mga anak mo. Right? So, when your filter bubble expands and expands and expands, the hope is you get to burst it. At mas mapalawak yung ating worldview at mas magkaroon tayo ng mas malalim na pag-unawa sa mga bagay-bagay. So again, you can access this website via this link. It's otbmedialiteracy.org/iwasfake. Aside from the iwasfake project, something that we also did in the course of the lockdown is this game called Share or Beware. You can access it via the link bit.ly/share or beware. Kung familiar kayo sa laro na ano uling pangalan nun? Among Us, no? Nauso nitong pandemic. Marami siyang similarities sa Among Us. So kailangan ninyong hanapin who among the group, who among the players is the fake news peddler. So if you feel like playing this with your students or with your friends, with your family, just access this link, no? Nandun yung it's not an app, no? Kasi wala kaming pera para i-develop siya into an app. So it's just a Google slide-based game. But you might still want to try it. If you don't want that, there are other games you might want to try. Aside from the Go Viral game, you might want to visit getbadnews.com or harmonysquare.game. No? So these are other games that are developed by the inoculation theory scientists. Kasi para sa kanila, a good way to study this information is by gamifying their research. So you might want to check these out as well. This is the end of my presentation. If you want to get a copy of the slides in PDF form, you can go to the link tinyurl.com/iwasfake101 or scan this QR code. Along with the presentation, you will find there all of the references I used here. So sana tuloy-tuloy lang natin yung ating conversation surrounding this information. And sana ay meron kayong mga bagong natutunan ngayong hapon at yung inyong confidence level in terms of your protection against fake news have increased. So in behalf of my co-founders in OOTB, that's Darlene and Sarah, thank you very much. You can follow us on our socials or you can email us in our website or email us at info@ootbmedialiteracy.org. Yun lamang, maraming salamat.
Okay, so thank you very much, Sir Marlon. So can we please give Sir Marlon a virtual round of applause, please? Ayan. Because I believe talaga na maraming takeaways yung mga participants natin. Not only the students, but also the teachers and the head of schools, no? So our topic is indeed very relevant and refreshing, especially with the proliferation of fake news. So if you will, we would love to read your thoughts or key takeaways this afternoon. So feel free to type them in sa ating chat box. We will be reading through them, and I'm sure na Sir Marlon will also be interested to hear from you guys. So, yeah, yun po yung question, sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much, Ephraim, for the question. No? Of course, it's very relevant right now in the context of the election season. No? Simula na ng election season sa Pilipinas. And first, we have to recognize uh, why. Why are certain groups or certain people seemingly anong tawag dito? Rejecting facts, no? Kung babalikan natin from one of the slides, no, yung usapin ng post-truth, baka pwede silang mag-fall under that category, that description. Yung mga tao na parang instead of relying on facts, they rely on their own beliefs. So, what is my advice? There's the idea of tireless persuasion. Ibig sabihin ng tireless persuasion, kahit na paulit-ulit ka na, no? You still continue. Kaya nga tireless, no? I think defending the truth and being in the side of truth is never going to be a futile effort, no? Na kumbaga, we may feel defeated, we may feel frustrated, especially if these people are our friends or our relatives. It's even worse, di ba? Parang malapit, meron pang layer ng dugo, no? Na parang ano ba to? Yung tito ko, yung tita ko, yung lolo ko, nandito na yung facts pero hindi sila naniniwala. Pero you go back to the idea of tireless persuasion, and again, there are ways for us to communicate our opinions and communicate our ideas in an empathetic way, no, na hindi tayo offensive, yung hindi natin kumbaga pinupuwersa yung idea natin sa ibang tao. Instead, we also try to understand where they are coming from, no? For example, I always advocate for the idea that we're not supposed to call people bobotante, even if it's something that we usually say, no? It's a very offensive term. But sometimes hindi natin mapigilan, no, yung sarili natin, ang bobo naman ito, or hindi naman to nag-iisip, andyan na yung facts pero parang hindi niya tinitingnan, hence bobo. So we try to stop ourselves, right? We try to prevent ourselves from that tendency to judge people in terms of their, say, cognitive ability, but just understand where they are coming from. And baka magulat kayo, meron pa kayong matutunan from them. So, yon. Just keep the spirit of tireless persuasion and empathy.
All right. So thank you very much, sir. For the next question, please. Question number 2. For columnists like this notorious Rigoberto Tiglao, how can we disprove such blatant conspiracies, especially when the author is known throughout Manila Times? So this question is from Jose Miguel Garin from the University of San Agustin.
All right. This is the same Miguel, right? Who won our game earlier. Okay. Ang tanong is, how can we disprove such blatant conspiracies? I think we've been doing it, right? A lot of our fact-checking organizations and journalists are doing this. It's more of why it seems that we haven't done any changes, right? Parang siguro nga nandito na rin yung part na frustration na bakit merong mga tao na alam naman nating nagsisinungaling, no? Harap-harap ang nagsisinungaling, pero nakakapag-publish pa rin sa isang dyaryo katulad ng Manila Times. For those of you who are not really familiar with the history and scholarship on journalism, the Manila Times is one of the oldest. And the very fact that it's one of the oldest, of course, it's a respected brand in journalism. But in recent years, especially under the Duterte administration, um, it can be said, I would use the phrase, it can be argued. I don't want to state it as a fact. It can be argued that the Manila Times is really government leaning, no? So meron siyang ganong leaning. Hence, um, arguable yung kanyang credibility. And the very fact that may ganong reputation yung the Manila Times for being not so credible, then um, people who write for Manila Times, especially the columnists like Rigoberto Tiglao, um, alam mo na they are writing for a specific audience, no? They are not writing for the general public. They're writing for people who believe their own ideas. Kumbaga, gumagawa din sila ng sarili nilang echo chambers. So, as much as I want to tell you na, sige, labanan natin sila, we keep on fact-checking them, that is true. That should be done. We still keep on doing that. But I also want to say na let them be, no? Let them be in a sense na Fox News has always been there, and Fox News has always been conservative. It has always been biased for the Republican Party in the US. I think we can say the same thing for the Manila Times. No, we have these kinds of papers. We have media organizations who have been very blatant of their political color. So, hindi naman natin sila mapapasara, hindi naman natin sila parang i-advocate na kasuhan sila, no? But we call them for what they are, no? There's no denying that they have this political color, and that alone is a very strong defense against papers like the Manila Times.
All right, so thank you very much. I think I agree with that, sir. No, there's wala nang better way to disprove yung mga conspiracy theories, but just through the facts, through presenting the facts and parang making them realize na ito talaga, this is the truth, and we just have to again tirelessly persuade them. All right, so thank you very much for the answer and your question, Miguel. So for the next question, question number 3. So the question is again from Miguel, and this was during the yung iwas fake na video, sir. So they're asking for the link, and I think it's in your Facebook account po.
Yes. Just search us on Facebook. Maraming out of the box sa Facebook kasi hindi very out of the box yung aming pangalan. But iisa lang naman yung out of the box media literacy initiative. So feeling ko naman makikita niyo rin siya sa Facebook.
All right. So para sa mga participants natin who are interested to share the video, you can check out yung official Facebook page ng Out of the Box. And I think we have a few more questions dito sa ating chat box. So while we are loading for the presentation, no, please keep your questions coming in. We still have time. Just don't forget to include your name and the name of your institution para alam naman namin kung saan kayo galing. And we would also know just to recognize you also then. All right. So, okay, so for the next question, this is from Lizelle Lumugdang from the University of Antique. The question is, what can you say about those people who unfriends or blocks others because of contradicting opinion?
Okay, isa pa to, no, na very relevant, no? within the past week or so, marami akong kaibigan na ganito yung mga pinagpo-post, no? Tungkol sa unblocking and retaining friends. This is my personal philosophy uh, regarding this. No, I don't unfriend people on Facebook unless they're completely toxic. No, unless they're completely toxic. So yung toxicity kasi iba-iba tayo ng level of tolerance. No, for some people, um, may mga tao na hindi naman talaga nila kailangan sa buhay nila. No, meaning, uh, okay, medyo mag-backtrack muna ako. The very concept of friend, right? The very concept of friend. Sa Facebook natin, iba-iba naman tayo, di ba? I think I have around 2,000 Facebook friends. But in the 2,000 Facebook friends that I have, iilan lang doon yung talagang I can call friend without the Facebook reference, right? The others are just acquaintances, people I've met in my life, blah, 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 blah. So, if meron akong Facebook friend na hindi ko naman talaga close, baka hindi ko pa na-meet once in my life, no? Umattend lang sa isang workshop namin, for example, and then I find this person very toxic, for example, no? Na para talagang feeling ko ina-attack niya ako or hinaharas niya ako or tinotroll niya ako, then I have all the right reasons to unfriend this person. No? I won't even call this person a friend in the first place. But also, so sino yung mga tao na hindi ko ina-unfriend? Usually these are my high school batchmates, no? Acquaintances from the past na I think if I retain being friends with them on Facebook, there is still a chance that they will see my posts. And if that is going to be enough as an effort for me to sort of expand their expand their echo chamber, then I'll choose to stay Facebook friend with these friends of mine na hindi ko ka-share ng opinion. Kasi nga, ang nangyayari, if i-unfriend natin sila, edi lalo nang lumiit yung kanilang echo chamber. No? So, nawalan sila ng friend na kaiba din ng paniniwala nila. Again, that is assuming na nakikita nila yung posts ko, which is of course something that I can't really confirm. So, just to recap, iba-iba tayo ng philosophy at iba-iba tayo ng level of tolerance for toxicity. So, if for you, talagang harmful na siya at hindi ka na makapag-function sa pang-araw-araw, then I think that's the right thing to do, to unfriend a person.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So, yeah, it can be very helpful and something to consider, especially ng mga student participants natin this afternoon. So for the next question number 5, this is from Jobel Tenorio of Aklan State University in Makato. The question is, for those of us whose primary goal is to stop mis and disinformation, what strategies of distribution beyond publishing might we consider?
This is an interesting question from Jobel. Okay. I think yung question ni Jobel mas what kind of platforms should we explore, right? For sure, aware kayo that TikTok has been quite popular the recent months, the past year, no? And we see that TikTok is not really limited to all the dancing and the, the viral dance craze, no? Alam natin na marami na ring political content sa TikTok, right? People who try to fact check, meron na rin silang TikTok videos for that. Meron na rin mga cooking videos. So, if we want to reach more people, then we want to go for these platforms. So, if Jobel is coming from a campus journalism background, I'm just assuming, if some of you are in the campus press, this is something that you really need to consider, no? Especially amidst the pandemic and the lockdowns. Instead of instead of just focusing your manpower and efforts in publishing the print version, in producing the print version, try out the other platforms where your communities reside. No? Kung nasan yung mga gusto ninyong maabot na tao, dapat nandun din kayo. No? There's always that fear of watering down the parang glory of journalism, no? Pagka parang nilagay mo siya sa platform ng TikTok, for example, or even Instagram and all of these other platforms. Pero yun eh. Yun yung kailangan mo na transition na gawin in order for you to survive. So and this goal of ours to stop misinfo and disinfo, hindi pwede na nasa isang platform lang tayo, no? All of these platforms will be useful. So kung saan ka komportable at kung saan ka sa tingin mo may maaabot, then I think that's a place for you to start.
All right. So thank you very much, sir. So I agree na we should also explore platforms, especially yung mga marami talagang audiences, lalo na yung TikTok. So as we know, medyo marami na rin fake news sa TikTok. So I think it would be really helpful na to turn this around and give factual news na naman or factual information and use the platform for it. So thank you very much, sir. For the next question number 6. So this is from Romelin Jean Peremne from University of Antique, again, Hamtic campus. The question is, why audiences are likely to believe fake news story?
Okay. You can review the slides if you weren't able to catch it. There are many ways to explain this, definitely. One is looking at the psychological vulnerabilities of people. It's in our very nature as humans, no, to actually fall for fake news. So this thing called cognitive bias is a very huge factor, no. Selective exposure is another concept, no. I think hindi ko siya na-include dun sa slide. Pero again, ang idea lang naman ng selective exposure, we consciously or unconsciously expose ourselves to media that that we feel positive about, no? So yung context ko nga kanina, if mahilig ka sa BTS, and these are the kind of stuff that you unconsciously or consciously seek, hence selective exposure, no? Or information seeking behavior. So kaya maraming tao na nahuhulog sa patibong ng fake news kasi nga yung mga paniniwala natin, hindi natin sila maisantabi, no? Hindi natin sila maihiwalay dun sa ating pagkatao, no? For example, right now, I have a lot of political biases. I have candidates that I am supporting for 2022, but I'm not telling you. Hindi ko sinasabi sa inyo because this is not the right platform for that, no? Hindi naman hinihingi sa akin 'yon, right? So this is the same kind of behavior that we hope people could practice, no? Na yung ating iba't ibang mga biases, we learn how to compartmentalize and we learn how to set them aside so that we can be more objective with the way we address and process information.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. I think we have more questions coming in. So we're just waiting for this share screen. Okay. So this is already question number 7 from Jeff Escalada of Capiz. And the question is, do we have a law that criminalizes or defines fake news as a crime and penalizes fake news peddlers? If wala pa po, if may magpapass po ng bill for fake news, what do you think should be the scope of the bill in defining and criminalizing them?
Okay. Thank you, Jeff, sa napakahalagang tanong. Disclaimer, this is not within my field of expertise. Like, I know there are a lot of other people more competent to talk about law and fake news. But as far as I know, um, we do have yung bayanihan law, right? That included a provision on fake news, right? If matatandaan ninyo, this happened last year na kung saan merong isang teacher sa isang probinsya, I think that was Zambales, na hinuli ng NBI for posting tweeting a certain statement that is supposedly fake news, no? So he was a complaint was filed against him under the bayanihan law. Yun yung pagkakatanda ko. But I think that has been scrapped already, and thankfully the teacher who was penalized for that was already relieved from, not relieved, was already the case was already ano to? Canceled, no? Na pinull out na rin ng NBI yung kanilang complaint for this teacher. Other than the bayanihan law, merong mga fina-file din sa Senate na mga anti-fake news bill. I think one of this is actually filed by Senator Soto, no? From our end and from the group of press freedom and media literacy advocate organizations, we have registered our disagreement with this bill, because we think that instead of solving the problem, it can actually worsen the problem. Kasi ang problema sa mga fake news bill, not only the one that was filed by Soto, but in a lot of the bills that are being filed, laws that are being introduced around the world, ang problema is kanino mo nilalagay yung responsibility of saying what is fake and what is not, right? And in countries wherein the government and the rule of law is unstable, there's a lot of impunity, you don't want to trust, right? You don't want to trust the government, you don't want to trust the people in power to tell which is fake and which is not, because we know that that can be weaponized and that can be used against the interest of people who advocate for the truth, no? So yun yung pinakamalaking dilemma sa mga policy legal based initiatives or interventions against fake news. So one solution for that is by employing parang anong tawag dito, independent body, no? Para siyang supposedly para siyang Supreme Court, no? Na magsasabi na this is fake news, this is not fake news, at mas merong tedious talaga na na libro or na reference of what is fake and what is not. And they are the ones who will be telling you if something should be penalized or not. Na separate mula dun sa policy implementors. Separate sila sa police, separate sila sa Senado, no? So kapag wala kang ganun, parang instead of doing good ay mas makakasama pa yung pagkakaroon ng anti-fake news bill. Although again, as I was saying earlier, mahalaga na merong batas or mahalaga na merong protocols that relate to fake news. Ako mas iniisip ko yung mga batas na towards platforms, no? I think that is what is being done in the US right now, no? They're trying to pressure Facebook to accept government regulations para hindi lang sila yung nagde-decide on their own. So in the Philippines, medyo nakaabang tayo doon kung ano yung magiging development ng calls for government regulation and intervention sa Facebook and other big technologies.
Okay, thank you very much for a very comprehensive answer, sir. So indeed, very thin line yung between fake news or not. So it's a very big responsibility kung ikaw ay
Yes.
isang organization that defines which is fake news and which is not. So let's hope that we can improve on this also here in the Philippines. So thank you, Jeff. Thank you, sir. For the next, we are already in question number 8, and this is from Ezra Balane from BNHS. Um, the question is, what can you say about the people who choose to stay silent than to correct others about their wrong conceptions?
Okay. I can answer this question in very different ways. I mean, I can be very passionate about it and say these are the people who side with the oppressor, etc., etc. That is my personal belief. But at the same time, I also would want to give a space for yun nga, yung konsepto ng benefit of the doubt, no? There are people who would want to disengage, right? And to not get themselves involved in politics, for example, no? And of course, that is within their right, no? Karapatan naman ng tao talaga 'yon, no? But again, you have to look at it in the right context. Sa konteksto ng isang krisis, sa gitna ng krisis kagaya ng COVID, kagaya ng fake news, yung mga taon who choose to stay silent, um, you can always argue that these are the people who are not really affected by the crisis, right? These are the people who you can even go as far as saying that these are the people who benefit from the crisis. But I won't do that. I won't say that kasi baka offensive din siya. So for people who uh, don't feel as enraged by the crisis that we are facing, there are many reasons why they choose to stay silent. So the first step is really to empathize and to understand where they are coming from. And if you are coming from the if you are coming from the position na you want them to join your cause, then the first thing that you want to do is not to antagonize them. No, do not antagonize them. Do not see them as your enemies or as people who hate you. No, and try to get them to be on your side. No, ayun lang.
Okay, so thank you, sir. So for the next question, question number 9. This one is from Augustus Boni Elio from ESETU in Iloilo City. The question is, who determines the credibility and truthfulness of fact checkers like Rappler? Do we have to always believe in what they say about a certain event or individual?
Ganda nitong tanong ni Augustus, no? Very very critical kasi hindi lang niya tinatanggap na pag sinabi mong fact checker, you have to believe them, no? Actually, ito na nga yung calls today, no, na there are supposed to be groups who fact check the fact checkers, no? Um, and I advocate for that as well, no? It's very important that within the community of fact checkers that they open themselves to each other for criticism, no? um I think one of the innovations that the recent innovations of fact checking organizations is yun nga, they open themselves to fact checking from outside organizations or outside entities by making their procedures, their processes as transparent as possible, no? Na maging open, ano talaga siya, open source at open activity talaga yung act of fact checking. Kasi kapag kapag transparent ka sa processes mo, transparent ka sa biases mo, mas kaya siyang tingnan ng outsider na uy, credible ito. Uy, nakikita ko kung ano yung proseso na ginagawa nila. Another innovation is by introducing people from different political biases and coming up with fact-checking efforts that are more or less representative, no? Kasi I think nanggagaling naman yung pagdududa sa Rappler dun sa very political biases ng kanilang mga members or maybe even as an entire organization. So, how do you solve that? Then have Rappler come up with a team na meron silang mga kasamang mga individuals who whom they do not necessarily share politics with, no? So for example, magsama ka ng isang individual or magsama ka ng ilang individual na hindi parehas ng politika ng mga members ng Rappler. So magkakaroon ka ng isang fact-checking alliance na mas kampante ka na yung biases ng members nito will be kumbaga merong check and balance na sinasabi, no? But again, it's very important that we advocate for these kinds of innovations instead of saying blanket na, uy, wag niyong paniwalaan yung Rappler, ano yan, bayaran yan or ano yan, 'di ba? Because that is really going to be very harmful and it's not really productive, not only for Rappler but for the whole fact-checking community.
All right. So thank you very much, sir. And we are down to our last two questions. I think marami talaga pang questions sa ating chat box, but don't worry, we are taking note of them and we can hopefully answer this for you even after the webinar. So for the question number 10, again from Romelin Peremne of UA Hamtic Campus, the question is, are you worried about the rise of TikTok because many large fake news problem about election misinformation?
Mhm. Nung nagsisimula pa lang yung pag-angat ng TikTok, ang warnings talaga ay mas nanggagaling doon sa pagiging, ano 'to? Dun sa cybersecurity threat ng TikTok, 'no, in terms of privacy, that they collect information of its users. So alam ko nung nagsisimula yung TikTok sa US at dito sa Pilipinas, ganyan yung mga balita about it. Pero kasi nga sobrang sikat na niya at sobrang nagustuhan siya, 'no, pumasok siya sa panlasa ng mga Pilipino. So andiyan na siya at hindi mo na siya basta-basta mapapabagsak. It's something that will just dissipate later on kapag merong bago, no? Kapag merong bagong app na nauso o sumikat. So am I worried sa rise ng TikTok? Not necessarily because all of these digital platforms have their own pros and cons, no? At it's almost futile to debate about it, no, na mas positive ba ang effect ng Facebook kaysa sa negative. Tapos na tayo diyan sa ganyang debate, no? Nandun na tayo sa punto na alam na natin kung ano yung problema ng Facebook at alam din natin kung ano ang problema ng TikTok. So it's more about how we're going to reduce those problems and introduce solutions to these problems and how we can utilize these technologies for the greater good. So pagdating sa TikTok, yes, we know there are a lot of misinformation already there. Nagsisimula na, especially dun sa mga nagbago pa lang sa misinformation. So what will we do about it? Let's pressure TikTok. Let's pressure the owners of TikTok to be more conscious about it, to introduce protocols in their platform to solve that. And at the same time, i-populate din natin yung TikTok ng mga good content, no? Ng mga content na truthful, that advocate for the truth.
Thank you, sir. And I think the Philippines is already in step one, considering that we're already aware that these fake news are already existing and we just have to be critical about them. So this is our last question for this afternoon. This is from Angelo Pan. The question is, how can social media be weaponized to foster truth against fake news?
Okay. Thank you, Angelo. I want to answer your question mas sa lente ng ano yung mga structural changes na gusto nating makita sa social media. Not so much with how us as users can use it for good. Kasi alam na natin yun eh, kung, kung paano natin gagamitin yung social media for good as it is. Ngayon, paano natin mababago yung social media, no, para maging mas maganda ito at mas maging conducive ito for truth and productive discourse. Una, sabi ng mga advocates, kailangan buwagin ang mga closed groups, no, sa Facebook. Dapat daw tanggalin na yung feature na yon sa Facebook. We love Facebook groups, right? We are able to do a lot of things using Facebook groups. But the problem is Facebook doesn't know how to monitor itong mga groups na ito. Usually ito yung pinagpupugaran ng mga extremist, ng mga ang tawag dito, ng mga anti-vax groups, at hindi ito nakokontrol ng Facebook. So that's one. Another is by really changing the algorithm, no? Kasi as it is right now, the algorithm on Facebook really prioritizes content that are viral, that are popular. And it's really blind when it comes to the truth, no? So hindi kasama sa decision-making process ng algorithms ng Facebook na, ay, ito, ano to, totoo yung sinasabi nito, so iaangat ko to. The way the algorithms work on Facebook is, ay, marami tong likes, maraming views itong video na to. Regardless kung tama o mali yung nasa video na to, ilalagay ko to sa taas ng feed ng mga tao. So the algorithms will really have to change, no? And sabi nga nung whistleblower na si Frances Haugen, Facebook doesn't want to do that because it will involve reducing its profits, no? And I hope all of these social media platforms will find a way to change their business models, no? Nililitaw yung economics nun eh, na tayo dito sa Pilipinas, I think it will take a while for Filipino users of Facebook to hate Facebook. Kasi ganun na yung trend sa US ngayon, no? Sa US, many US citizens are starting to turn their backs against Facebook, no? Na parang ayaw na namin sa Facebook, mababa na yung trust level ng Facebook sa US. Pero dito sa Pilipinas, wala eh. The trust level is still so high, and parang napakahirap imaginein for us to really forget Facebook and remove it in our system. So, ang pwede lang natin gawin ngayon is really just to do our best to pressure and to lobby and communicate with Facebook and all of these platforms so they know, no, that these are our concerns. Ayaw na namin ng historical revisionist videos sa YouTube. So we have to keep talking about it. Kaya nilang gawin yon for Vax, no? Last week or last week, tinanggal ng YouTube yung mga anti-vax videos nila. So can they do that as well for historical revisionist videos on martial law and Marcos? I hope they listen. So yun yung mga pwede natin gawin.
All right. So thank you very much, sir. And of course, thank you sa ating participants who typed in their questions. At this point, we would like to request again Sir Marlon to give a synthesis of the talk for this afternoon.
Okay. Ang synthesis ay ang gaganda ng mga tanong ninyo. At wala na akong oras para mag-isip ng synthesis. Biro lang. Una sa lahat, gusto ko magpasalamat sa organizers at sa lahat ng mga kasama natin ngayong hapon. The very fact that you stayed to the very last part of the program means that you're not only interested to learn about fake news, but there's really that motivation within you that you want to be part of the solution. And that's an important step. And that is something that I find very inspiring. So in our battle against fake news, know that there are a lot of things that we have to do. right? Media literacy is just one, fact checking is just one. We need to keep talking to our social media platforms. We need to keep lobbying to our policymakers and our decision makers in the government. And if that is too big and too large a picture for you, then you can start small, no? In your own communities, in your own schools, in your own families, even. Start introducing practices that are more media literate, right? Train your friend, train your brother, your sister, train your mother, your lola, your tito, your tita to be more literate, and do not simply tell them, tayo mag-fact check ka nga, or ma'am mag-fact check ka nga, because sometimes that sounds just elitist and offensive, no? So it takes a lot of effort, and I hope you are really in it for the long ride. It's something that you can commit to. And one last, I find it very inspiring, and I really am grateful that we have this Fake News 101 event uh in DOST event, no. It's something na we haven't really done in a long while in OOTB, to be working with uh a community that is not really within the ambit of press freedom, journalism, and social science. So nakakatuwa na nagawa nating i-marry yung ideas, i-marry yung principles at context ng science and technology with the very problem of fake news. So, tuloy-tuloy lang natin yung conversation, at sana maging simula ito ng mas marami pa nating pag-aaral at pagpapalitan ng kuro-kuro in the future. Thank you very much.